We've now reached the final part of this task, and this involves considering the constraints and the scope and limitations. We're going to start by looking at the constraints first of all. For this section, you need to consider what limits there are on the project. For example, the hardware. Your app is going to need to run on mobile phones, on maybe Kindles, on tablets, but you will need to decide which hardware devices your app will need to run on. Because ultimately, the more devices that you choose to use, possibly the more code you're going to have to write. So that's something that you're going to need to put in here. This is the pitch that you're making, is that your app is going to work on that hardware. Similarly, what software is the app going to be built with, and what software is the app going to be used with? For example, what browsing software would it work with? So that's both of those first two. What platform? iOS? Android? Consider which platforms your app is going to need to work with. And then we've talked about the software that you're going to use to actually create the app. You will need to do some research and demonstrate that you've thought about the platforms, the hardware, the software, and the software that you'd actually use to write the app. So that's the constraints paragraphs that you'll need to write there. And then finally, we come to limitations. I've put scope there because I think that's probably quite a useful way of thinking about the limitations. We talked about our gun scope before, didn't we? That which you are going to do and that which you're not going to do. Because don't forget, going way back to the waterfall, the user requirements, you get the customer to sign off on what you are going to do. And that way, at the end of your project, you can look back and say, I said that I was doing A, B, and C, and there it is, A, B, and C. And therefore there can be no ambiguity and no argument and no reason not to pay you for your services. So, first of all, the budget. What is your budget likely to be? The size of your budget is likely to dictate the type of app that you can produce. Secondly, what functions are you not going to put with your app? So while you would not give a long list of functions that it won't do, you will state that there are certain areas that you're not going to go into. Next, what software can you use? In other words, what are you actually able to use to build it? Now, this is where we go into your imagination slightly, because clearly you are not going to be building the app, but you will have said what software you're going to use. And so you need to restate this is the software that your coder will be using, and also about you or the coder's experience. Are you going to be using new technology? Are you going to be creating the world's first virtual reality app for driving instructors? No, you're not. Not for a guy who earns between £30,000 and £50,000 a year and has one car. He's going to be looking at more like a sort of a very base level of expense. He does not want to be throwing an awful lot of money at this. Something that you should be asking Justin about, maybe. So those are the final two areas of your user requirement. And once you've completed that, P2 is done.